We've been having a lot of interesting discussion on this channel lately.
The problem is real and it's destroying families. It's an addiction and needs to be treated as such. I feel like this is like the first time we've ever really heard someone call being in an MLM an addiction, but it's really interesting. This kind of is an important topic that we should talk about, and maybe we should treat it like an addiction.
I wanted to dive deeper into the idea that MLMs can become addictive. That might sound over dramatic at first, but it turns out that there are similarities between addictions to gambling and being involved long-term in MLMs. If we can be open about the possibility of this idea to more spectators, maybe we can have a greater and more widespread discussion about this. Maybe we can help more people get out of MLMs. Is this just a silly comparison I'm making in my head? Or is there really something more to investigate here? But before we get into today's video, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, NordVPN. You've heard me talk about how important a VPN is on this channel, and Nord is an exceptional option that will keep you safe through all of your internet browsing habits using its advanced features for a better online experience. VPN, or Virtual Private Network, is an encryption tool to keep your internet activities private. No one, not even your internet service provider, will be able to monitor the things you do online. Nord also keeps your IP address and location private as well, and with their no data logging policy, you can be sure that you're being kept safe and secure. Last time we talked about VPNs on my channel, I talked about how my husband and I have been using them for years, and he likes to use them to access media that's not available in our country, and I like to use it to change my virtual location to be in the UK so I can watch Friends. Well, there is another thing that I want to show you guys that I think is very useful in my world because it's essential to some of the videos I make here. In my anti-MLM subreddit videos, I use a text-to-speech platform to read dialogue of the MLM distributors. You guys like to call it the Karen voice. Sometimes these posts can be really long, so I'm translating a lot of text. And the platform that I use has a limit of 3,000 characters converted to speech per day. But with NordVPN, I can bypass this with one click. No, I'm serious, dude. Let me show you how. While there's over 60 different countries to choose from manually, you can also take advantage of Nord's Quick Connect feature. With one click, I'm suddenly connected to a different part of the United States, and the text-to-speech website is none the wiser, and I can use it to convert as many characters as I need, because I'm a sneaky Susan. And hey dudes, Black Friday is just around the corner, so if you've ever wanted to start using a VPN, you gotta get your hands on this deal. Nord is offering my subscribers a special package for Black Friday 2020. You'll get 68% off of a 2-year plan, making it only $3.71 per month, plus 4 additional months for free, and this offer extends until December 1st. So you can claim this for yourself now, or you can wait until after Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Just as long as you do it before December 1st, you can get your hands on this sweet deal. Just go to nordvpn.com/SavannahMarie and use the promo code SavannahMarie at checkout. You'll be able to find all of this in the description and a pinned comment below. Thanks again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you for supporting this sponsor. It is because of you guys and your support the last time I talked about Nord that made them want to come back, and that's so important to me, obviously. And we're gonna have collaborations in the future too, so I cannot be more appreciative of you guys checking this sponsor out. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of today's topic. I just want to make one thing very clear. This is my disclaimer for this video. I am not a medical professional, nor do I have an education in psychology or anything of the like. I cannot diagnose people, and I can't just like make up my own disorder because I think it might be a thing. These are all just my opinions. They're based on the way my brain kind of pieces together similarities that I've noticed. But if there's anything I want you guys to take away from this video is that maybe there's something here and maybe we should talk about it more. And I'm not trying to downplay gambling addictions because I know they're super serious. When I was researching for this video, I had to like watch and listen to people's stories about their gambling addictions, and it like really took a toll on my mental health. Like it was making me so upset because some of these stories are really, really heartbreaking. But you know, on the flip side, I can also say that I've heard some MLM stories that are heartbreaking as well. So anyway, take everything I say with a grain of salt, and let's just turn this into a conversation and see if anything stems from it. So I got all this information here off of an article by the Mayo Clinic. It's an overview of how they describe a gambling addiction. So let me read to you how they define it. Compulsive gambling gambling, also called gambling disorder, is the uncontrollable urge to keep gambling despite the toll it takes on your life. Gambling means that you're willing to risk something you value in the hope of getting something of even greater value. Gambling can stimulate the brain's reward system, much like drugs or alcohol can, leading to addiction. If you have a problem with compulsive gambling, you may continually chase bets that lead to losses, hide your behavior, deplete savings, accumulate debt, or even resort to theft or fraud to support your addiction. When first presented, some of this might seem kind of far-fetched when we're comparing it to MLMs, but what if we took that definition and just swapped out gambling with like MLM terms? Here's what that would sound like. Compulsive direct selling, also called MLM disorder, is the uncontrollable urge to keep joining and partaking in MLMs despite the toll that it takes on your life. Being active in an MLM means that you're willing to risk something you value in the hope of getting something of even greater value. Making a sale or recruiting a new team member can stimulate the brain's reward system, much like drugs or alcohol can, leading to addiction. If you have a problem with compulsive MLMing, you may continually chase bets that lead to losses, hide your behavior, deplete savings, accumulate debt, or even resort to theft or fraud to support your addiction. The only thing I changed in what I just read to you was the word gambling. Yet still, most of this definition like contextually can still make sense. So let's go through the updated description bit by bit here. 1. Compulsive direct selling, also called MLM disorder, is the uncontrollable urge to keep joining and partaking in MLMs despite the toll it takes on your life. I'd say that most of the time people don't compulsively join MLMs. A lot of the times it's manipulation and lying and stuff. We know all that. We often will see though that someone will join one MLM and that's enough for them to see that the business model isn't gonna work. It's not something they want to be involved in, and they're able to learn the MLM business model enough to come to the conclusion that, yeah, MLMs are pretty much set up for most people to fail because they experience the difficulty of trying to make sales and recruit for themselves and witnessed how quickly their friends and family become annoyed with their behavior. Other times you might see someone join one MLM, leave it, and then join a second because they want to give another company a chance. Maybe they just weren't a right fit with that company. Maybe this one will be different. And then they ultimately end up feeling the same feelings and experiencing similar things the second time around, feeling pressure to behave in the same way as their first MLM pressured them. And then they can come to their own conclusion from that. Maybe, just maybe, someone could be convinced into joining a third MLM for one final try just to ultimately come to the same conclusion. I'd say that the scenarios that I just listed are most common with MLMs, and it's rare, I mean, in my observations, that someone needs to join more than 3 MLMs to finally get the message. And using my self-proclaimed expertise in MLM, I'd say it becomes compulsive after the 4th try. That's probably when you need to start digging and being like, why do you feel the need to do this again? Why do you think this company will be more rewarding than the last handful you already joined? 2, being active in an MLM means you're willing to risk something you value in the hope of getting something of even greater value. Now, this can go a few ways. When we're talking about risk versus reward in gambling, I mean, it's monetary pretty much. With MLMs, yes, it's also monetary risk versus reward. But as with gambling addiction, there's more at risk than just money. If you've ever gambled, you basically know how it goes. This doesn't just go for casino gambling, like slot machines and blackjack. Gambling can also include the lottery and other betting races that kind of follow the same structure. Put down a small sum of money as a bet in the hopes that you'll make a bigger return. MLMs are similar, but they're more complicated. So every MLM has a starter kit, whether it's just like promotional material or actual product. And those starter kits are all priced differently. So companies like Pharmacy will get you in for $20 for their lowest starter kit. On the other hand, LuLaRoe, I would say, seems to have the highest of investments that, I've personally witnessed, but maybe there are more out there that are higher. But their lowest initial starter set is about $500. So most other companies have starter kits that the initial buy-ins fall in between those two numbers. MLM distributors like to call this an investment. For the sake of argument, let's consider this to be your bet. After a certain point, it's my opinion that you can't just say, I'm in it for the discount. That's a common argument that people in MLMs like to make, and if you've joined a handful of these companies, the likelihood of that statement being true becomes more and more diminished. Let's use Mayo as an example. Their lowest starter kit is $99, but it doesn't include any full-size products. It just includes some marketing materials and some samples. So you're likely going to be pressured into spending at least $200 on their next level starter kit that actually contain products for you to use, because after all, no one wants to buy a product from you if you don't use it yourself. So even though that's kind of the reality there, let's just say for the sake of this argument that you throw down $100, that $99 for that lower starter kit. So you've made a bet of $100. Your reason for joining pretty much has to do with making money. When my Nate market partners pitch the opportunity, you hear the terms financial freedom, time freedom being thrown around. And other recruitment techniques we often see is, hey, you get to stay at home with your family. You can be your own boss. You can set your own hours. And these are non-monetary rewards that people put value on. But in the end, it does come down to money. Like, you can't survive financially if you're not making money. And therefore, these non-monetary rewards can't survive long-term either if there's not money being made. Does that make sense? So to go back to this initial statement, being active in an MLM means that you're willing to risk something you value in the hope of getting something of even greater value. In this scenario, you risked $100 initially in the hope of getting something of greater value, whether it be to achieve full financial freedom so you can make money from home and be home with your family, or just to have a little bit of money on the side. That kind of stuff differs from person to person. 3, making a sale or recruiting a new team member can stimulate the brain's reward system much like drugs or alcohol can, leading to addiction. I can't say whether this is true or not because I don't have any medical or psychological background, but here's how I see it as a layman. Our bodies make a neurotransmitter called dopamine. I'm sure we've all heard of that before. It plays a role in how we feel and experience pleasure, which of course influences the way we think. Dopamine makes you feel good, so we do more things to initiate that response within our bodies. Now, interestingly enough, there was a study done in 2010 that found that dopamine is released while gambling, and that pathological gamblers showed a significant correlation between dopamine release and excitement level, while no such interaction was found in the healthy control group. They concluded that their results might suggest that dopamine release reinforces maladaptive gambling through increasing excitement levels, reducing inhibition of risky decisions, or a combination of both. These findings may have implications for the understanding of dopamine in pathological gambling and other forms of addiction. Now, obviously, there is a difference here between gambling and MLMs, and that is that there is kind of like an instant repetitive gratification involved in gambling in a casino environment, which may lead a compulsive gambler to find that kind of gratification outside of the casino by playing the lottery or scratch cards or something. With MLMs, sales and recruits are usually pretty few and far between, but is the satisfaction that an MLM participant receives when they get those things worth the wait? Can it be enough to be considered addicting? Is there a maximum period of time between sales that someone can be able to say that the dopamine release is addicting? Is this dopamine release similar to those with a gambling disorder? These are questions I don't have the answers for, but I'd be curious to know. Also, throughout my research, I've heard this being kind of explained in this way. People with a gambling addiction have some kind of mental health disorder, and gambling just essentially like preys on those people who have this particular mental disorder because it essentially changes the way they think. So it's kind of like they already have something in their brains that would make them more susceptible to develop a gambling disorder, but there was something there in the first place that gambling just found its way in and kind of like slithered in and took over the way they're thinking. Is it possible that MLMs are the same way? I think so. MLMs change the way you think too. You're constantly being fed toxic positivity and being made to believe things that aren't necessarily true. That changes the way someone thinks too. So I think that there's more to compare there, but I'm not the one to do it, you know. 4, if you have a problem with compulsive MLMing, you may continually chase bets that lead to losses, hide your behavior, deplete savings, accumulate debt, or even resort to theft or fraud to support your addiction. Chasing bets that lead to losses, I think, can be directly correlated into chasing away your friends and family, leading to a loss in that relationship, or at least leading to a relationship that will eventually need repair in the future. Hiding your behavior is a really interesting one. We hear time and time again that people in MLMs like to play off that they're doing better than they actually are, whether it's just going to a car dealership and taking a picture with a Mercedes and being like, look at what my MLM's paying for, and then leaving the car lot without an actual car because you can't afford it. Or an example we saw a few weeks ago in one of my anti-MLM subreddit deep dives, someone who works at a private school who's responsible for like distributing financial aid to families who wish to go to this private school but can't afford tuition, talked about the many times he had seen families in financial distress because of an MLM, but they're sending their kids to private school, so it looks like they're doing well. Any outsider's perspective would be like, that family's doing financially well because their kids are in private school, but it really isn't always the case. In Elbow's Punique story, she talks about how her upline would always make it seem like she's making all these sales and she's making all this money, but she was secretly spending all that money herself to get herself up the ranks. And then she would use that to be like, look how successful I am, you can be successful too. The whole time she wasn't actually making money at all. And she had her entire downline thinking that she was, and that they wanted to strive to be like her. Or, you know, the multiple times that the subreddit has called out like a unique hun for showing their credit card, but like covering up most of the numbers, and then with the receipt and being like, this paid for this. Sometimes, you know, it'll be like, oh, well, the receipt says Visa, but your credit card is a MasterCard. Like, that doesn't add up, or these numbers mean this, you know. So there's a lot of examples out there of people who are in MLMs literally lying to make it seem like they're better off than they actually are. Depleting savings or accumulating debt with MLMs is so beyond common with these things. I don't even have to explain that. There are a million LuLaRoe documentaries out there that you can watch where there's so many examples of this all over the place. Resorting to theft or fraud might be a bit of a stretch, unless you consider fraud to be lying to people on the internet, but I can't think of any specific examples of someone resorting to theft to support their place in an MLM, but I mean, I guarantee someone's done it before, I just don't know. Okay, so in the Mayo Clinic article, they list symptoms of a gambling addiction. I'd like to compare those to MLMs as well. So their first symptom that they list here is being preoccupied with gambling, such as constantly planning how to get more gambling money. Well, people who are more susceptible to an MLM addiction are probably those who are constantly preoccupied in their business. And we've heard of these stories of marriages being destroyed and falling apart because the one in an MLM becomes obsessed with being a boss babe, and then it overtakes their entire lives. Like, they can't go out to dinner without them, hey, waiter, come here, take an Instagram picture for us so I can talk about how Mom Nate paid for this dinner. You know, if you're on social media all day, every day, rarely making posts that don't involve your MLM, I'd say you're preoccupied. The example that the Mayo Clinic gives here, planning on how to get more money to support your gambling addiction, I don't know if that necessarily applies here, but it's just an example they give to the symptom. But I absolutely do believe that many people involved in MLMs easily become preoccupied with it, and it overtakes their entire lives at a certain point. 2, needing to gamble with increasing amounts of money to get the same thrill. Maybe someone can shed some more light on this, but I don't know of an example in which this applies to MLMs. Maybe needing to get a bigger downline to get that same thrill that they got with their first recruit. You know, maybe that's a thing. Maybe constantly needing to beat last month's sales.
I love you.
I love you too. But I'm not sure if that applies. 3, trying to control, cut back, or stop gambling without success. Again, I don't really know of a scenario where this would apply to an MLM. Most of the time, an MLM distributor doesn't recognize that they have a problem. They don't see a need to step back or control how much time or effort or money they're putting into it, especially when your uplines are pushing you to do more. Cutting ties with an MLM requires self-awareness, and they have to be able to see the destruction for themselves. Someone who is brainwashed enough in the MLM world is not going to see the need to stop. This goes back to the whole changing the way you think, you know? If they change the way you think enough to be like, I don't need help, this is not a problem, then maybe. 4, feeling restless or irritable when you try to cut down on gambling. This may apply when you have friends and family trying to tell you that you're putting yourself in financial and emotional distress because of the MLM. And we do see the irritability coming through when anyone tries to talk about their involvement with an MLM in a negative manner. This isn't necessarily them trying to cut back on their MLM involvement. It's more so the people around them who are trying to convince them to do that causes the irritability. So I don't really know if that applies either. 5, gambling to escape problems or relieve feelings of helplessness, guilt, anxiety, or depression. We hear this all the time with people who have been in MLMs. Before I joined this company, I was homeless and I had no friends and I was depressed, or something along those lines. And now look at them, they're so successful! And they found a community of friends friends that they'll have forever, which we know they won't the moment they leave an MLM, or someone in that friend group leaves the MLM, they're like shunned, they're a suppressive person. But I digress. When MLM distributors use these kind of anecdotes to recruit more people, they're literally convincing people to join an MLM to escape problems or relieving feelings of helplessness and depression and desperation and all those things. So I think this definitely applies. 6, trying to get back lost money by gambling more, chasing losses. This 100%. A common recruiting tactic is, yeah, you're spending $100 now, but you'll make that back in a week. And then when that doesn't happen, it's always, well, if you want to earn that money back, if you want to make sales, you got to do this and you got to buy that and you have to, usually involving investing more money with the belief that it will net you more in the end. An example of this would be to throw a party. Let's take Pure Romance, for example. The distributor needs to have some stock on hand, whether it's just to display or to sample products in the party, or if they want to have inventory on hand to sell during that party. They may also need to invest in business cards, party favors, business supplies, etc. But your upline will always say, oh, you'll easily make that money back. It's rarely the case. 7, lying to family members or others to hide the extent of your gambling. We talked about this earlier with the whole pretending you bought a car or the illusion of sending your kids to private school. So yes, this applies. 8, jeopardizing or losing important relationships, a job or school or work opportunities because of gambling. Hello, yes, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is anti-MLM 101. This is so obviously common in MLMs. You cannot be successful in an MLM if you're not willing to cut ties with haters. Like I was just saying, like suppressive people, essentially like a cult, no matter who they are. We see examples all the time of uplines trying to convince people to cut out their moms, their sisters, their best friends because they're not being supportive of your business. This is super cult-like behavior for sure. And I think that's an interesting point too, is that I mention cult deprogrammers a lot when we're talking about like how to get friends and family out of an MLM. There's a reason why that is like a actual profession that people have, because this isn't some like, hey, you should stop this. Yeah, you're right, I should. It's not that. There's so much that goes deep into the human psyche when it comes to cults, but I mean, we also know that cults and MLMs share a lot of similarities as well. 9, resorting to theft or fraud to get gambling money. Again, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe in extreme cases, but I can't think of anything specific. I'm sure someone somewhere in this comment section will have an anecdote about that though. 10, asking others to bail you out of financial trouble because you gambled money away. Although I don't have any specific examples to cite of this happening, I guarantee this happens often, I got myself into $10,000 of debt, please help me, mom. To say that doesn't happen, I don't believe that to be true. I think it happens a lot. There's another notable thing in this Mayo Clinic article. This quote says, unlike most casual gamblers who stop when losing or set a loss limit, people with a compulsive gambling problem are compelled to keep playing to recover their money, a pattern that becomes increasingly destructive over time. I think this relates heavily towards MLMs as well, because most people would enter an MLM, maybe 2 or 3, and come to the conclusion themselves like, I'm losing money, I need to stop, or setting some kind of limit for them. Some people go into this trying to be responsible and being like, I need to make a chart, keep graphs, like know how much I'm spending and how much I'm bringing in. Whereas someone who might have this potential MLM addiction may keep going despite their losses. They might join 5 or 10 different MLMs in their lifetime, or, hop from company to company to try to recover the losses from the last one. There's talk about remission from gambling in this article. I don't know if there are any examples of MLMers being in remission, especially because the initial investment in many of these MLMs is so low. In gambling, I mean, obviously you could bet $1 or you can bet $20,000, You probably have a higher chance to lose more money in a gambling addiction than with an MLM addiction, at least over the course of like the same amount of time, Like a gambling addict would probably lose more money in 5 years than an MLM addict would. Does that make sense? On the topic of when to see a doctor for a gambling addiction, the article says, have family members, friends, or coworkers expressed concern about your gambling? If so, listen to their worries, because denial is almost always a feature of compulsive or addictive behavior. It may be difficult for you to realize that you have a problem. problem. The part that says denial is a feature of compulsive or addictive behavior is important because it doesn't just cover gambling addictions. It covers all addictions. Denial is present in addictions point blank. And it's no secret that people who are heavily involved in MLMs often don't see that there's a problem until they put the pieces together for themselves, if they ever do at all. And I get messages all the time from you guys of people saying, my friend just joined this MLM, what do I say to her, and stuff like that. And I want you all to know that every single video that I post, I have an article linked in the description of how to get friends out of MLMs. And I particularly like this article more than any other article because it features an actual cult deprogrammer talking about ways to essentially deprogram someone who is experiencing cult-like behavior, but tying it to MLMs. It's really interesting. So check it out if you ever need that kind of advice. I feel bad because I can't answer everyone's questions, but if you're watching this, just know if you're ever in that situation, there's an article that I will always link back to you if you were to ever ask me this question. It's in my descriptions all the time. But yeah, I mean, just the number of messages that I get shows me that family and friends and coworkers are often concerned about people's involvement in MLMs, similarly to how it's spoken about with gambling in this article. Now, this part is really interesting. Let's talk about risk factors presented here, and we can compare them to MLMs. So some of them are spot on, others are like extremely different. 1, mental health disorders. People who gamble compulsively often have substance abuse problems, personality disorders, depression, or anxiety. Compulsive gambling may also be associated with bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Now, I wouldn't say that all of these ring true to MLMs, but I did do a video a few weeks ago reacting to a Mayo distributor who literally was talking about their MLM involvement essentially curing their feelings of depression and anxiety, and we see this move a lot. I was so lonely before I joined my MLM. I was so depressed. My anxiety was through the roof. I never wanted to talk to anybody. I would have never considered myself to be someone who could do sales, but now I found a sisterhood and there's a purpose there and my life has meaning again. Or joining this company helped me get over my social anxiety. I was so uncomfortable trying to make sales and recruit, but now I got over that fear and now I have a 500 person downline. Like, you know, we hear those stories all the time. So while I wouldn't say that there's like a tie between people with OCD or like ADHD or like substance abuse issues who join MLMs, but the depression and anxiety are definitely there. And those are two mental health disorders. Age. Compulsive gambling is more common in younger and middle-aged people. Gambling during childhood or teenage years increases the risk of developing compulsive gambling. However, compulsive gambling in the older adult population can also be a problem. I feel like there isn't really an age where it's safe from being recruited into an MLM, you know? There are plenty of companies out there whose reach extends to different demographics. Like, it's interesting to consider that the younger somebody starts in MLMs, that the higher risk they have of developing an MLM addiction. And this is especially important because, like we've talked about before many times actually, there are some MLMs who start recruiting kids at age like 14. We talked about it last week with Tori Bell. There's also companies like Origami Owl and Rock Your Hair, just to name a few. I mean, with Rock Your Hair, they're using kids who are like 6 years old to start selling their products. And what about children who are raised by an adult MLM distributor, you know? Kids are like sponges at those really young ages. If they see their mom being so happy, or pretending to be happy at least, with their business and what they're doing with their lives or whatever, it's probably more likely that it's going to end up persuading kids to grow up and explore that avenue of income if their parents had any kind of success anyway. Now, if their lives were ruined by their parents' involvement in an MLM, then I guess that's different. Sex. Compulsive gambling is more common in men than women. Women who gamble typically start later in life and may become addicted more quickly, but gambling patterns among men and women have become increasingly similar. Now, this is obviously pretty different with MLMs. Women are preyed on and recruited in MLMs far more than men are. But when men do get dragged into MLMs, like we see them get dragged into like Primerica, maybe like Pampered Chef. Sometimes we see them in essential oil companies. And when that happens, that rare occasion where a man is a brobot, they go hard. So maybe men are more likely to become addicted compared to their female counterparts, but women make up such a large percentage of people who are MLM distributors, so there's bound to be a higher number of them who become addicted. This is a statistic we just don't have, but I feel like men definitely go harder when they're recruited into these things. Family or friend influence. If your family members or friends have a gambling problem, the chances are greater that you will too. This is important because MLMs encourage reaching out and selling selling to you and recruiting your friends and family first above anyone else. If you have people in your life who don't know the true nature of these companies, you'll have an easier time getting them to join you. But I think it's important to bring up the reality that a lot of people join MLMs for a sense of purpose and community, like in military families where husbands are often deployed overseas and the wives are just kind of left there to care for the children while their husbands are out. MLMs are super common in these families. Military wives are preyed on quite heavily, but it gives them a reason to kind of gather with each other and have a social purpose. And in the first season of the Dream podcast, she talks about, like, there's a whole episode about it. It's like an hour long. She talks about the small town that she grew up in where like everybody is involved in an MLM also, but it's like communities where women are just like traditionally stay-at-home moms. Same thing, they'll all end up in MLMs together and have parties together just to be able to have a reason to socially gather, all for similar reasons. So yeah, I think friend and family influence is a really big risk factor for sure. Now this one here is one that I obviously have no knowledge to speak on, but you know, it's possible. Medications used to treat Parkinson's disease and restless leg syndrome. Drugs called dopamine agonists have a rare side effect that may result in compulsive behaviors, including gambling in some people. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a thing. Certain personality characteristics, being highly competitive, a workaholic, impulsive, restless, or easily bored, may increase your risk of compulsive gambling. This is obviously extremely applicable to MLMs. All of these personality traits make it easier for someone to fall into the MLM trap. Then we have some complications listed on the Mayo Clinic article that are also very similar to MLMs in the way they regularly complicate people's lives. Relationship problems. Obviously, yes, relationships are commonly complicated by MLMs, mostly because the distributor begins to have a hard time separating work life from personal life. And an example would be using personal social events like a wedding or a baby shower or something like that to shill your products or try to recruit or even just like hand out business cards, or being unable to hold a single conversation with someone without bringing up your business. I think those are things that can easily disrupt your personal relationships. Financial problems, including bankruptcy. Again, obviously, yes. People have filed bankruptcy because of their involvement with MLMs. We've heard so many examples of families being in financial distress because of these, just in general. Legal problems or imprisonment. Not too common to my knowledge, but not out of the realm of possibilities in extreme cases. Poor work performance or job loss. We often hear examples of people complaining about their co-workers trying to shill their business at work, and many companies forbid this kind of behavior. The company I worked for over 10 years, it was like a non-compete clause. Like you couldn't try to sell shit that you do outside of the company while you're working for them on the clock, you know, or within business parameters. But you know, this is something that any other company that has similar rules, you know, that would result in job loss or some kind of punishment at least. Destroying relationships with your fellow employees might also hinder one's work performance. Poor general health. I think this is relevant, but not in the way that a gambling addiction would put this one in this category. With MLMs that sell health and nutrition products that have not been approved by the FDA, it's entirely possible that revamping your entire lifestyle to consume the products that you're selling may have an effect on your physical health. Now, back in the 80s, I like to bring this up a lot when we're talking about like how dangerous MLMs really can be, but you know, keep in mind that this was 40 years ago. There was an MLM called the Cambridge diet, which essentially was like a starvation diet, and people legitimately died from following it. It was like 300 calories a day or something like that. And the worst part is that this company still exists today. It's just called the one-to-one diet. They changed their name, and they obviously changed the diet plan or whatever so that people aren't starving to death and people aren't dying. Actually, it's funny because one of my best friends texted me yesterday telling me about, he was in like this health Facebook group or something like that. People were talking about isogenics, and it was like, oh, I just drink 2 shakes and 1 meal bar every day and I've lost this many pounds. It's like, yeah, because you're starving yourself. So, you know, if a big company like that, like Isogenics, is literally still having people give this kind of advice, that can really have an impact on your general health. And the final point we're going to talk about today is regarding prevention. And the article says, although there's no proven way to prevent a gambling problem, educational programs that target individuals and groups at increased risk may be helpful. Hi, hello, anti-MLM movement. How are you doing? It's great to have you here. It's nice to see you. This is precisely what we're doing here. This is what we're here for. This is what people should be here for anyway. I always say that my target audience is not people in MLMs. It's always those who wish to learn more, either before they join an MLM or after and they're just looking for like a community of people who have also been through the same shit they've been in. My hope is that I can provide enough information and education to keep people from joining these companies in the first place, or to keep someone from falling into another one in the future, and to also provide a place for people who previously have been victimized of MLMs like myself and like many of you guys watching this, so that we can all relate to each other and share experiences and stuff like that. I mean, the anti-MLM movement is extremely important, and we must not lose our message and our purpose, because I think that if an MLM addiction is a possibility, is a thing, that the anti-MLM movement is going to be the biggest player in prevention. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you today. I know this was kind of all over the place, and I can't necessarily say that I've come to any conclusions after researching all this, but I think that it is a good kind of foundational starting point where maybe we can start treating multi-level marketing companies as a possible root of addiction. I think this is possible, like I truly do. I'm just not educated enough in the medical and psychological aspects of it. But hey, let me know what you think, as always. You guys always do. Let's have some good conversations here. And before I sign off here, let's say thank you to my patrons. The biggest thank you in the whole wide world goes to Amanda McMahon, Anxiety for Days, Corey Allison, Turd Ferguson, Yesenia Rivera, Katrina Rosemarick, Elizabeth Wyatt, Karina Winman, Maria Burchett, Meredith Nakata, Molly Wasilewski, Rach J, April Lindblom, Bobby, Boris Geller, Clark Grace, Daniel Urena, E. Higgins, Erica Lauder-Craddock, Evan Adler, Eve Blondo, Hey Felicia 93, JP Eugenio Schaefer, Justin Kelsey, Kelly Creffield, Kim Cartwright, Laura Lynn Martin, Maddie Darley, Rachel McHenry, Savannah Krakowskis, Tuesday the 13th, and Kat Loves Things and Stuff. And to the rest of you fabulous people, thank you for everything that you do. Even if you're not a patron, thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. If you're still here and listening, don't forget there's like a big deal going on right now. All that information is in the description and a pinned comment below. Get yourself online security and 4 months thrown in for free as long as you purchase before December 1st. And also thank you to you guys who have contributed to our baby registry. I know I've been kind of zoomed in today, but I'm extremely pregnant. And the link to my registry is down below, although you guys have really been killing it. I'm going to be scheduling a live stream where we can all get together and open all this shit you guys sent me. I'm just like so unbelievably grateful. Like, you don't understand what it's like to be wheeled out of the post office with a receptacle full of packages. It is so weird and also a little embarrassing, but like in a good way. So thank you guys. It's been amazing to those of you guys who are so supportive of this little special miracle here. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone. As always, keep making waves, babes, and I will smell you all later. Mommy Tsunami out.